It's Dylan's KC Barbecue at 4 Valley locations. Our sports bar in Arrowhead is packed with TVs for the ultimate sports fan. Our Wildlife World Zoo location will have you on the edge of your seat, dining right next to our 60,000-gallon shark tank. Dylan's Bayou at Pleasant Harbor has never-ending sunsets, beautiful people, and live music every weekend. And our newest location, Western Trails Ranch, is 12 acres of rodeo fun and live outdoor concerts for the entire family. It's Dylan's KC Barbecue, where we're elite, unique, and memorable.
This puppet show stays on because of you.
Welcome to the She's So Right Show. We are two conservative women called by Christ to speak up for what's right.
Lindsey Graham, known nationally as the Patriot Barbie, is a proud author, public speaker, and brave political advocate for freedoms, rights, and conservative values.
Brandy Barkley is a powerful Christian leader and founder of Power Soul, certified Christian life coach and public speaker, forging God's battle cry to strengthen believers.
Guys, get ready to say it way more than you're used to. She's So Right starts now.
Freedom fighters, are you tired of giving your hard-earned money to big corporations who use their power against us? We are done. As conservatives, the best and most effective way to vote is with our dollars. You can shop with all our favorite companies, sponsors, and affiliates right on our website.
Go to www.shesorightshow.com and click the shop page. We are proud affiliates for MyPillow, My Patriot Supply, and other conservative brands. Get massive savings. Go to shesorightshow.com. Join us in supporting American companies.
Hey guys, welcome to the She's So Right Show. You're here with Lindsey Graham, the Patriot Barbie, and my gorgeous red velvet jacket co-host.
It's leopard. It's summer. It's too hot for velvet.
Okay, do you guys remember many episodes ago when Brandy used to make fun of what I was wearing? Remember I had like the solar pants on or something? You said I looked like Paula Abdul.
Yeah, I actually liked it though.
Well, now we're on camera, so we're both trying to actually dress up for our job.
Yes, I had to put eyelashes on.
Red leopard jacket.
Yes.
So exciting.
Little rock and roll.
We have one of Brandy's. This is great because I'm kind of the guest booker, and Brandy's like, who is this, and who are we interviewing next week? But this is Brandy's guest, Dr. Sabine Hazan, and I'm going to introduce her and read her bio, and then Brandy's going to tell a little bit about how she met her. So Dr. Sabine Hazan is a specialist in gastroenterology, internal medicine, and hepatology. Dr. Hazan has used her medical expertise in many regards over the last 2 decades. The founder and CEO of Microbiome, a genetic sequencing research laboratory, she leads 35-plus studies investigating the role of the gut flora in various diseases. So through her study, they've been exploring the role of the gut flora in COVID-19. Microbiome became the first lab worldwide to detect SARS-CoV-2 from patient fecal samples by whole genome sequencing. With these findings and extensive knowledge on the microbiome and disease, Dr. Hazan and her partner at Topelia Therapeutics, Dr. Thomas Borody, developed what she feels is the best first line of defense against COVID-19. And there is so much more to this, but I think it's
so exciting.
Yeah,
I can't even stand it. So really fast, welcome, Dr. Hazan.
Thank you.
Are we saying your name correctly? I want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay.
People have said it Hazan, Hazen, same thing. Tomato. It all works.
Okay. So I met you through some really good friends of mine, the Hillstroms, who just bragged about the poop doctor. and I'm like, what is this? And I think it's fascinating. I don't know, you guys, but being 40, almost 49 years old, all the things that you think you start to get, like how much your gut has to do with your health. And we were at a charity event with or Mel Gibson's charity event, because he does work around the world for persecuted Christians, and it was a beautiful, beautiful event. You were across the table. We didn't even chat. So, but I'm really excited to hear from you today and really help fill our listeners in on what you have found as an expert, because we all know that we're not getting a lot of expert advice from the media right now. So I would love to hear what you have found through the last couple of years in your COVID research.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. And that event was not the perfect place to kind of talk microbiome.
It really wasn't. No.
And usually people do reach out to me, and that ends up being the whole topic of conversation. I'm like, I'm having dinner, but it is, it's the field that I picked, and there's a lot of power in the microbiome. So a little bit about me. I've done clinical trials for pharmaceutical companies for almost 3 decades. When clinical trials became fecal material in a capsule, one could say I went a little bit rogue because I said we're in the microbiome business. And to be polite, by the way, the SH.T business, and we don't even know what the hell we're doing and how we're accomplishing improvement in C. diff or other diseases. And so, curiosity got to me, and I started I started sending stools of patients and my own family, et cetera, to different labs, and I got different results. And right there kind of, raised a question, because I'm in the research world, right? I'm in the world where everything needs to be valid, verified, and reproducible, right? And so when I got lab results from different labs that basically told me that I had certain microbes, but then I retested it 2 weeks later and I didn't have them, I said there's something off with this field if you can't get a valid result of your microbiome. So I basically opened a genetic lab, and I hired the scientist that was behind the BRCA gene. And I said, look, I need a validated, verified, reproducible assay that I can test my stools today, tomorrow, in a week, in a month, in a year, and it's still my fingerprint of my microbiome. And so we did. I embarked in this venture to understand the science, to understand the microbiome. More really, it was an expensive venture for me, for my family, because I felt I don't want to wake up at 60, 70, 80 years old with Alzheimer's and say, I could have done something about it in my 50s, right?
Right.
I coulda, shoulda, woulda. That's like my worst 3 words. And so I basically said, it's only money. I'm just going to put it in there, and I'm going to see what I'm seeing. And the first thing I noticed is everybody is different in the microbiome space. The second thing that I noticed is that within families, there's a similarity. In fact, my husband and I have been married almost 30 years.
Poop is hereditary?
Poop is hereditary? There's a similarity. And you talked more to my husband than we talked at the party. But you could see, like, in our gestures and our discussions, we're very, very similar in our behavior. And I think it's really because the microbes have kind of, become one in a way, and that's why you see all these husbands and wives resembling each other, right? This is the amazing thing.
Do you think is that from diet? What is that? What do you think? What do you
I think it's just a symbiosis of microbes. I think it's a symbiotic relationship of microbes mingling. You kiss your husband.
Like unnatural.
Yeah. Like you're making out with them the most, sleeping by them, eating with them, like you're in the same environment.
Your life is in sync, and therefore your poop
But
is
not
in
only
sync.
that, what was
That
even
is
more
interesting.
interesting is my oldest daughter, who her and I butt heads. We're basically like so similar up to our microbiome. And my youngest daughter and my husband are so similar in their everything, right? And they're up to their microbiome on everything. So it was really fascinating to see that. And then when I started with that, I said, well, I wonder what is the microbiome of kids that have autism look like compared to their moms and their siblings. And that's when we started. That was one of the few papers we published, basically, that showed that the kid with autism had a completely different microbiome than the 2 siblings that were neurotypical. And so that became the idea, that started the idea of maybe if we do fecal transplant, which fecal transplant is taking stools from a healthy donor, putting it into an unhealthy donor via colonoscopy. If we did this, could we restore the microbiome of the autistic kid, and can we improve autism? And that was really the hypothesis that started, and that was the work that I was doing before COVID hit.
That's incredible.
So have you done this?
So I did it in one case. It took 3 years to get approved by the FDA. So fecal transplant is a new procedure. It's not really new. It's been used for C. diff. But C. diff, they allow us, because patients are dying, and they're like, okay, you know what? You doctors have been doing it for a while. So the FDA gives us an ability to do fecal transplant for C. diff patients. And we have an amazing registry now created by Dr. Colleen Kelly at Brown University that basically is registering all these fecal transplants that doctors are doing so that we monitor the safety of the procedure. And so for C. diff, it's approved to have doctors doing it. However, for autism, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, if you want to start doing it for other conditions, you have to submit a protocol to the FDA. You have to write the protocol, and then the FDA has to approve it. And sometimes, like the one case of autism took 3 years and a lot of work from regulatory, agents to basically push it through, because every month they come back with, well, you didn't answer this question and this question, and this is like a 18-page document that you have to go back and send to the FDA. So it's a ton of work. But in cases that we've done with C. diff, we definitely saw something with other conditions. A couple cases of arthritis that improved. One case for me was Alzheimer's. And then when you talk to Dr. Thomas Barodi, who's the father figure of fecal transplant, he's had a lot of improvement for chronic fatigue syndrome, etc. So, this to me was something that excited me, because when I saw my patient with Alzheimer's after fecal transplant improve his memory with his wife's microbiome, something happened to me that I said, I need to understand this. I need to dig into this. And so essentially went to the physician at the VA who wrote the book on anaerobic infections of the gut, and I asked him that question. I said, what am I seeing when I'm seeing Alzheimer's improving? And he said, you're seeing the microbiome in action. So basically that's what I was doing before COVID, and I was working with Dr. Barodi. And then when COVID hit, we said, wait a minute, we're in the fecal transplant world, we're in the microbiome world. Surely COVID is in the stools, we can find it in the stools, and surely we could figure out how to change the microbiome without having to do fecal transplant. Of course, at the beginning, it was like all these hypotheses, right? So everybody was coming out with their hypothesis. Gilead was coming out with their treatment, the monoclonal antibody. Pfizer, everybody was coming up with their treatment. And then, of course, we saw...
I don't trust Pfizer. I don't trust Pfizer's.
Yeah, and then we saw the controversial treatments of hydroxychloroquine, Z-Pak, and ivermectin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
which kills all the good microflora,
going.
right? I can't wait to hear. I want to talk about that. Just what those antibiotics do to our gut too, Doctor.
So what we discovered from C. diff is that when you have C. diff and you try to kill it with an antibiotic, 65% of the time it's going to succeed. However, the rest of the time it's not going to succeed because you're killing the whole microbiome.
Okay, let's take a break really quick, Dr. Hazan. And when we get back, let's talk more about the results of your treatment and what you found and all the good stuff.
So
you guys
curious.
are listening to the She's So Right show. We'll be right back.
I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now.
Freedom Fighters, we're back. You're listening to the brilliant Dr. Sabine Hazan, who is telling us all about the most incredible thing ever, how to treat all kinds of issues, arthritis, autism, Alzheimer's, chronic fatigue. And she found so much out during this COVID situation. She is I love that I don't want to minimize what you do and call you the poop doctor, but I think that our listeners are going to be fascinated, like we are, to hear about what that means, a fecal transplant. I
love that you called it the most fascinating thing ever. And it's like...
It is. It is amazing.
Pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
But we'll ask the question that you asked when we were...
Okay, yeah. So on the break, I thought, okay, so if you're transplanting someone else's poop into you, aren't they just going to poop it out? What happens? How does this help anybody?
So when we do transplant, yes, you're right. I mean, they have a chance of pooping it out, but you don't really need much in the level of poop transplant for microbes to start repopulating a gut. But what we do to ensure, at least what I do to ensure that the microbiome sticks is, I go via colonoscopy all the way to the end of the colon, and I implant there. And in fact, the success rate for implantation in the colon is much, much better. The other thing that I do is I obviously, because we developed a validated assay, I have the ability to see if my donor matches the recipient in about a month, 6 months, or a year. In other words, did I grow a new garden in his bowels?
Oh, wow.
Right? He started with XYZ of bacteria, and I put ABCD. Did ABCD latch on and stick to the colon, and therefore does that sustain healing and treatment?
Okay, I have
so
a
that's
question.
the importance
I have a question.
of stool studies, yes.
Once you've implanted and you've grown a new garden, doesn't the person's lifestyle, like if they eat fast food every day and they eat junk and they take horrible medication, doesn't that kind of re-corrupt or
So if you've
No.
got obviously bad habits, you've got to change the habits.
Yeah,
but
okay.
however, I tend to believe that the habits are created by the microbiome.
oh
Why do I say
Ooh.
that?
Like they cause cravings and things like that?
Yes. So I say this because I had a case of metastatic mesothelioma. A woman was dying, and basically I gave her grandson's microbiome to expand her life. We did this with the FDA, approving that protocol. And this was an emergency protocol, so we got it approved by the FDA within 24 hours. When we did the case, the one thing that was shocking to me. So first of all, this woman had a hemoglobin of 7, could not eat, loss of appetite, and then we gave her a new microbiome, her grandson, who was 9 years old, poop, and she started craving French fries and chicken nuggets.
oh my gosh, no way.
Yes, so makes you wonder, and we see that.
I'm like, this is the most
and we
interesting
see
topic.
that. Like if you start
chicken nuggets.
asking the questions to patients, and there's enough. So we created this group of doctors called the Biome Squad, which are all doctors that do fecal transplant, like myself. And we actually meet once a year at a meeting that I created, the Malibu Microbiome meeting. And essentially, we talk about our experiences, right? And in fact, I have to upload that website to kind of put all these meetings on it. But doctors have reported, patients that were alcoholics all of a sudden are not drinking because they changed their microbiome.
That's insane.
So there's definitely hope in the future, in my opinion.
Wow.
But we need, in order to get to that hope, we need to understand what these microbes are doing and what microbe does what, in my opinion. That's why I stepped into this, because I saw a future where pharma was going to be pushing pills with poop, and I said, we're going to be in the poop business, and we're going to have patients, the same thing that grows hair. And there were 2 cases from Colleen Kelly where she did fecal transplant on 2 patients with alopecia areata, and the patients grew hair.
Wow.
But guess what? The same thing that grows hair can make you lose hair. The same thing that improves your suicidal ideation can make you suicidal. So it behooves us to be to advance this field to understand the microbiome.
Okay, so I'm a committer. I need to know the end of the story. I can't start watching a movie and go to sleep. I cannot. So now we've got 2 unfinished stories. The autistic child, have you treated him? And then I want to know if the mesothelioma patient got better. I need to know.
So the mesothelioma patient, we published that paper. She ended up living way longer than expected. She improved her weight. She started her appetite. The problem and the challenge with cases like that, a one-time fecal transplant is not going to do it. But, she lived 29 months instead of the average 16 months. So
Wow.
I'd like to believe that fecal transplant did something. But, of course, this is one case.
Right.
Now, Mimi Wang at MD Anderson is doing some amazing studies with fecal transplant in cancer patients. So I encourage anybody to, reach out to her because that's her forte. She's speaking on that. She's leading it. And she was speaking on the microbiome research, on the microbiome meeting. And I think it's on the Progenobiome website, her talk. So there's definitely interesting studies coming out with fecal transplant and cancer. We've seen cases of melanoma improving with fecal transplant as an adjuvant therapy. to CAR T cell and to other therapies. So I think that's going to be a field. So for my one case, yeah, in my opinion, I do believe that it helped her. The autistic case is still going, so I'm not going to say anything. But we did submit a protocol for 30 kids to be done because we feel that, one case is not going to tell the story. We need more kids. And also, there's a lot of parents out there that want this procedure, that have a normal neurotypical child, and they want that microbiome to be implanted in their kids. And it's a shame that they don't have the ability to do that. So
there's no risk, right? There's no risk involved.
Well, no, there's always risk. For everything, there's a risk. There's a risk of the procedure. There's a risk of infection. There were 4 cases that died from fecal transplant, and part of the risk is really not testing the microbiome properly. And especially now in a time of COVID, that's why it was so important for me to look for COVID in the stools, because I knew I was going to continue doing my research on fecal transplant, and I didn't want to implant COVID in a patient that didn't have COVID, and then you end up killing that patient, right? So
I, when we get back, I want to kind of go there a little bit again with like how medicines hurt the gut. Also, when you said, medicine to prevent suicidal thoughts can also cause suicidal thoughts. I think that's really interesting. Heartbreaking, because I had a girlfriend who was on anti-suicidal medication when we were in high school, and she stopped taking it and then overdosed on it. So it's just, I think it's really interesting how this has so much to do with even mindset. Like
I think we program the body to keep taking pills, right? So
it's a vicious cycle.
We program the body to eat sugars. We program the body to drink alcohol. We program the body. So I think our microbiome has a huge role in what we're craving, in my opinion. I think our microbiome, basically determines your longevity, determines whether you're going to have disease, etc.
Okay, when we get back, I got to know how often you have to have this done and how fast I need to do this so that I stop craving tequila every day.
Is it elective? Forget the boob job. I want poop.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the She's So Right show. You're here with Brandy Barclay, Lindsey Graham, and Dr. Oh, your writing is sloppy. Sabine
Hazan. Yeah. Is it sloppy? Well, it's sloppy when it's just for me.
Well, and I had it on my phone, and so I thought I had it memorized until I was put on the spot. So, Dr. Hazan, is everything that you're telling us, the microbiome, the transplants, all of this, it's currently being approved by the FDA. Is this all new clinical trial type science?
Yeah, so it's not approved.
Okay.
It is definitely not approved, so don't go asking your doctor or GI doctor for fecal transplants. Not even close. It's only for C. diff, which is a condition you get basically by taking antibiotics. So
interesting, okay.
Only if you have C. diff and you have basically recurring C. diff are you approved for fecal transplant.
What is C. diff?
So that's very
Explain that
important to know.
What's C. diff stand for?
Clostridium difficile, which is a little bug that secretes toxins, causes diarrhea, and can kill people.
Okay.
So for that condition, it is approved.
What causes that?
FDA.
What causes that, Dr. Hazan?
Well, I tend to believe it's from overdoing it with antibiotics, whether you're eating beef with antibiotics or whether you're taking antibiotics. Remember, all these antibiotics were created to, kill one bug, because in the olden days, and I believe this is a trend that needs to change. We used to think strep pneumonia causes pneumonia, and therefore let's give penicillin to treat strep pneumonia. What we didn't realize is that while we were treating strep pneumonia, we were killing off all the other microbes around. And that's basically what allows Clostridium difficile to flourish in a way, because you're killing off all the families around the Clostridiums, all the families in the microbiome that are sustaining your health, etc. So it's no question when people tell you, well, I took antibiotics and then all of a sudden I gain weight, or I took antibiotics and all of a sudden I started an autoimmune process. Did they take the antibiotic that saved them from having the pneumonia, but then did that healing of the pneumonia also trigger 10 other problems in their immunity? And so that became the whole big thing about probiotics, right? So anytime you took antibiotics, you supplement with a probiotic to basically recreate the balance, right?
Sure.
But unfortunately, even in the probiotic world, there's a lot of poor quality out there, and people tend to overdo it and kill their microbiome with poor quality probiotics. So the whole onus of my whole mission with Progenibiome is really to make people aware of the importance of gut health, the importance of making sure you take on the right things and the right foods for your body. Don't count on a fecal transplant that could be risky to change your habits. Change your habits right now. If you're overdoing it with sugar, well, stop the sugars, like remove it. If you're overdoing it with tequila, stop the tequila. Because, you know what I mean?
I'm not overdoing it.
This reminds me of the commercials where they show a woman who maybe she tinkles a little bit in her pants because she's had a bunch of kids, and they're like, stop your overactive bladder. But the side effects could include heart attack, death, loss of appetite. Wait, it's like, oh my gosh, what are these things causing? So is there any suggestion that you have or anything as far as I think this is a big problem in America, and my husband and I have been talking about this a lot.
Huge.
So Brandy and I, over-medicating. Every doctor wants to just prescribe something instead of treat health.
Yes.
So what kind of advice do you give people who are, I'm on, not me, say I'm on 5 pills a day. How do I wean myself off? How do I get my biome back to normal?
The first thing, and it's so funny, we all know this, we can all write the book on weight loss, right? So we all know this. Move more, eat less. You're going to lose weight. It's just, you don't need a fancy diet. So I think the first thing
sounds really hard.
Got to wait. What?
That's hard for some people.
I said that sounds really hard.
When you've had a lot of tequila.
I know, but unfortunately, you've got to have the discipline.
Yeah.
And so you have a choice in life, right?
That's
you have
right.
a choice. You could be on 5 pills, or you could stop the 5 pills. Like, for example, I see patients in my office that come in with heartburn, and they're getting worsening of heartburn, and they want me to increase their medications. And I have to tell them, lose the weight, stop eating, that double cheeseburger, just cut down to 1, cut down
I don't know.
to less.
Dr. Hazan, this sounds different than what Dr. Fauci has been telling us for years. I'm not sure I want to
don't
believe
know.
it. I'd rather just stay in my house
Well,
and stay
I
locked
mean, that's
up
the
and
thing.
gain
So
weight.
we can be a pill-pushing society,
That's right.
or we can take onus of our health
Yep.
and basically say, you know what, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to take my vitamins. I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to make sure that the vegetables that I'm buying are from a farm that doesn't put pesticides.
Organic.
I'm going to make sure that I clean my vegetable. I'm going to make sure I increase my fermentation of foods and stay away from the medicines and the treatments and all that, because then you just pop a pill when you're anxious. You pop a pill when you're not depressed.
We'll be right back. We're going to listen in on what you've learned about COVID and how we can be healthier as a society when we get right back.
God, we need you now.
Hey guys, you're listening to the She's So Right show, and we have special guest Dr. Sabine Hazan, who is the poop master. She knows how to, really so much about good health that I think it makes me sad, because we haven't heard anything in 2 years about actually getting truly healthy. And I'm super excited to get into what you found when you were studying COVID and your advice to everyone, Dr. Hazan.
So the first thing that we discovered is when we found COVID is we looked at the microbiome, and what we noticed is that people that had severe COVID had almost no bifidobacteria in their gut. Bifidobacteria is the bacteria that is in your probiotics. So that created actually the billion-dollar industry of probiotics. And when we compared people that had severe COVID with people that were exposed to patients with severe COVID and never got COVID, those people that were exposed to COVID but never got COVID had superior bifidobacteria, like a high level of bifidobacteria.
Can you say that again so I can tell
That
my
is
husband that
so-
I have superior
That is so awesome.
bifida?
I call it. It's funny because I call them like my golden poop because they have they're factories of bifidobacteria in their colons, right? And so I think that's now how do they get that? That data we're going to be publishing on the Progenobiome website, so you could see all our data. The paper actually on the lost microbes of COVID-19 is on the website. The paper that we found COVID in the stools is also on the website.
You're going to be a resource. What you're saying on your website is you're going to be a resource. Yes. You've tested people with, quote, superior bifidobacteria, people that were exposed to COVID that didn't get it. So they are the healthy people. You're going to have published what made them healthy?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I love it.
It's going to probably include diet and exercise.
Did it include the vaccine? Let's talk about that for a second.
No, these people were virgins to the vaccine.
Did you test anyone that had the vaccine?
So that data is coming. Yes, we are coming out with vaccine patients. We are coming out with long hauler patients. What's in their microbiome? What's going on there? So that data is coming, and also what's increasing bifidobacteria. That's important, and also what's destroying bifidobacteria, because it's more important to stop the destruction than to keep taking pills to increase your bifidobacteria.
You probably can't say much about that yet, correct?
I can't say it because I like to publish first, because once it's published, it's validated, verified by the peers.
So I have the reason why I was, compelled to call you was our friend, Dr. Hillstrom. He had COVID and ended up having shingles. And he said you were the one who helped him the most. And I want to, are you seeing a lot of patients come to you with things like that right now?
Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of long haulers, and I'm seeing a lot of, I don't like to say vaccine injured, but we're going to call them that because, when somebody has a side effect a week after the vaccine, you have to say, it could be from the vaccine. I mean, I'm in the clinical trial business where I've done clinical trials for pharmaceutical companies, and anytime a patient had a problem with a medication within the month, that was deemed a side effect of the medication. So we have to call a spade, and if a person has a symptom, and shingles is one of them also, in vaccine patients, we have to pay attention to them. So it's interesting because vaccine injured and long haulers are presenting the same way. And one wonders about potentially the spike protein being the injury factor, whether the spike itself is the problem. So more data is going to be coming out on that. I don't want to spoil it, but because it has to be published and it has to be criticized, unfortunately, because that's how we do research. We have scientists that criticize. These peer review process are long, they're tedious, but ultimately it's a discussion between the person who reviews, that's a critic, and that is the expert in the field, versus the person who did the experiment. So that's why when you see a paper that's published in BMJ Gastro, The Lost Microbes, and by the way, that paper took 8 months to get published because it was a back and forth to make it a better paper, to make it, understood, by others. So, I think that's the importance of publication. That's the importance of doing the quality research. And, this data, this research is not something that nobody is going to sponsor. Nobody's really looking at cause and effect. They're just looking at product, and developing products. I don't believe in a world that just develops products. I believe in a world of understanding what created the improvement. We learned so much from C. diff by doing fecal transplant that we saw that it was really loss of diversity in the microbiome that caused C. diff to begin with to flourish. So with the same principle and the same idea, could COVID occur in people that have a dysbiosis in the gut, an imbalance in their microbiome. And certainly that's a huge population in America if you think about it. Our diets are not the greatest. We're eating processed food. We're putting, pesticides on all the ground. We're eating foods that are just, not as pure as other countries, for example. And also, you look at the beef industry, vaccinating the beef and giving antibiotics to the beef. Is that detrimental to our own gut microbiome? And are we damaging the gut microbiome of future generations? If you look at autism, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, cancer, all that is on the rise. So clearly we're doing something wrong and we're going in the wrong path. So at some point we need to stop and say, wait, what have we done? It's not working. We're destroying the microbiome of humanity. Because unfortunately, if you destroy the microbiome and you destroy the diversity of the microbiome, in other words, you destroy, certain races, etc., you're going to destroy humanity. Humanity needs diversity of races, much like the microbiome needs diversity of microbes to survive and create a healthy individual.
Does this make you nervous at all coming out with, science and tests and data that you're about to publish that goes against what the narrative has been for 2 years? And, Brandy and I have met with and talked to doctors who have been silenced, reprimanded, disciplined for speaking up against the narrative, which the narrative is, vaccination works and everyone needs to be vaccinated. And that's how we're going to cure COVID. But you're saying things that very much make sense but are the opposite. Are you nervous about publishing these things at all?
I fight for every publication. I fight for the truth. That's who I am. I think if we stay silent, we're guilty. I think we need to fight. We need to stand up, and we need to basically say it as it is. If somebody wants to disprove my research, go for it. That's what science is all about. It's about proving and disproving, right?
Right.
I wrote the data. I did the research. Disprove me. If I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to say, yeah, you know what, I was wrong. Because that's what science and research is all about. Science and research is not about this is the way and that's the only way. Never, ever in the history of the world has there been something that was a pill for all or a formula for all. We're all different. How could we possibly require the same formula, the same pill? And by the way, this is a form of globalization too, because you're globalizing the same formula for everybody. You're potentially globalizing the microbiome. And with globalization of the microbiome comes globesity, comes increase in other diseases. That's a dangerous path to take, in my opinion. So I see a future that is, very dark, and that's why I started that's why I started being a voice on it, because I see the microbiome of humanity disappearing.
So you're saying
we see it.
All biomes created equal type thing? Like we're eating so bad and we're destroying our bodies so badly that we're all just going to have bad biomes, and therefore, essentially.
Well, no, she's saying this globalist idea is that everybody taking the same medicine, doing the same thing to their gut in all different countries, it's destroying the diversity of what we need in our guts. And how people would you, this is just, I'm curious. I have no idea. People in other countries, in other environments have different, I would imagine, microbe for that particular environment. Don't we?
Absolutely.
Our bodies adapt to our environment and things like that too, right?
Look, you go to Mexico and you get diarrhea because you're from, Southern California, and you're eating in some little restaurant, off the beaten path, and you get diarrhea. That person that lives in that community, in that restaurant, that eats the same food as you will not get diarrhea. But you will get diarrhea because you have a different microbiome than that person.
Wait, everyone's been blaming the water in Mexico forever. Is it not the water? It's our biomes?
Well, but guess what? But
it's
for those people, that's their environment.
Yeah.
That's what they're used to, right? If you go to the Amazon jungle, you put me in the Amazon jungle, and, I try now to be less sterile than I was, less, germophobic, because in a way we've been programmed to hate germs, but really we need some microbes. We need to be with the earth. Farmers have a great microbiome. They're playing with the dirt. They're playing, with some farmers,
Nature.
I shouldn't say all
Fertilizers
farmers.
and-
Nature.
Yeah.
Just the world.
Well, the good farmers. I mean, regenerative farms. Like I
Yeah.
know, there's a couple of farms that do regenerative farming. They don't use pesticides. They don't use any bad stuff and they diversify their plants, and they live a long time. So, there's something to that. There's something to natural foods. There's something to Amazon people that live in the Amazon jungle. They're basically in with the earth. Look at the Amish population. They don't have any asthma or problems that we have in, urban cities. So
They drink
there is
milk
something,
right out
or
of the cow.
Central Africa.
Yeah.
Those people are eating zebra raw. They're touching the blood of the zebra. Then they touch their kids and family members. And there's certainly some great studies on that. We need to pay attention to that, to what is working in some countries and what is not working in others. And we need to go back to basics a little bit and more natural.
Totally. I totally agree.
That's my opinion.
I've gone
okay.
full hippie the last year. Like, full.
It's interesting. I have a question. If you have this, I want to know what your thoughts are, because I know that Bill Gates is buying up farmland. Like he now is owning most of the farmland. When one of my uncles passed away, he has a farm. He had a farm in Oklahoma. They were on my aunt's doorstep pretty fast wanting to buy her farm. What's your thought that one person or one organization would be buying most of our farmland, and does that freak you out?
So first of all, my clinical trials initially, my clinical trials with Dr. Barodi were hydroxychloroquine, Z-Pak, vitamin C, D, and zinc. That's the first protocol we put out as a placebo-controlled trial. And, of course, Bill Gates sponsored a multi-million-dollar trial on hydroxychloroquine, which why did he do that to begin with? That's the first question. But then it gets worse. My second trial was ivermectin, doxycycline, vitamin C, D, and zinc. And, of course, he, again, paid for a multi-million-dollar trial to destroy ivermectin. I have a problem with competition trying to destroy others' research. I have a problem with somebody thinking that they know it all when they are germphobics themselves.
And not a doctor?
Not exactly,
He's not even a doctor.
He's not a doctor, and he also is not a role model for what healthy person is, right? So at some point, we need to see that and stop being obsessed with the fact that he's got so much money and following the money. I live in Malibu. I'm surrounded by people that have money. I'm not impressed by money. I'm impressed by good deeds, kindness. That's what it all matters.
Just
right?
gave me chills. You know what? This was so much fun having you on. Thank you so much. I learned a ton, and I can't wait to the website.
So
Liz.
you guys can follow Dr. Hazan and see her articles and her information. Check out her line of not probiotics, but vitamins that she developed at progenibiome.com. It'll be in the description, progenibiome.com. Dr. Sabine Hazan, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you so much. God bless you all.
Thank
God
you,
bless
ladies.
America. Hey business owners, this is Lindsey Graham, freedom fighter and entrepreneur. The last 2 years, the government has been forcing strict mandates and lockdowns on you and your business. Well, I have incredible news to share. There's now a tax credit specifically created for any business that had employees in 20 and 21, and you can get up to $26,000 per employee. It's time for you to reclaim the money the government took from you that's rightfully yours. Go to SheSoRightShow.com, shop page for a direct link to apply. Do not ignore this, friends. You are owed the money you lost during lockdowns.